So Melanie Crutchfield is a creator, tinkerer, aspiring do-gooder, a doer of Python-y things with Django and feelingsy things with a cool service she made called Fri Aug. She didn't write tests. She's here to help us avoid making the same mistake. Please make Melanie feel welcome.
Hi, little sleepy bears. How's it going? It's like the afternoon. If any of you need to like draw eyes on your eyelids so that you can like small kind chill and sleep, that's fine. It's cool. It's fine. We'll do that. I won't judge. So that's my face there. My name is Melanie Crutchfield, as previously mentioned. I'm Hello Melanie C almost everywhere on the internet. And I'm going to share a cautionary tale about testing. And so it begins. Do you ever have those things where you're like, I'm totally gonna learn that later? Like, but you also know that later is like a mystery time that's actually never gonna come? Like hands on that? Like 3, 4, good. Some liars back there, but that's fine. It's fine, we're just getting to know each other. Yeah, so I am a community taught developer in that all of my learning was completely informed and guided by the San Diego Python user group and San Diego PyLadies. This was a really wonderful and beautiful process for me, mostly because it was accessible to me. As a stay-at-home parent to 2 small kids, I couldn't like haul off to a boot camp, and I didn't have the financial or time resources to go back to a traditional education. And so like the massive benefit of being community taught is that it made a career in tech possible like at all for me. The downside though is that there's no one there to like make you do all the stuff that you don't want to do, but like you should do, right? People are only so mean at a meetup, and then it's like awkward and like a COC violation. So there's no one there to like make you take your developer vitamins, so to speak. So when I started learning Python, Django was the thing that people told me to learn. And I was like, I will totally do that later. And then like there was this happiness app challenge, and the app challenge was like you can make a web app or mobile, like desktop, like whatever it was. It just had to help boost happiness. And it just so happened that I had like a half-finished Python thing that did just that, and so that was like my magical time. And so the time came. I made the thing. It's called 5UP. It's very fun. It sends happy texts every day unless you don't live in the US or you have a weird carrier. I am so sorry. International stuff is hard, and I'm going to learn it later. The point here, though, is that I took my developer vitamins and I learned Django, which is fortunate because that's how I make my living now. After that, my sweet, sweet community full of dinosaurs, obviously, told me I should learn testing. And I didn't quite know what that entailed. I did know, however, that it sounded scary and awful. And so I was like, I'm doing that later. And they believed me because they're suckers. Anyway, so I kind of like limped along, like absorbing little bits and pieces of testing / running away from testing until I got a fancy job that required testing, and not like, Sabrina, the engineering manager is going to be mad at you a little bit if you don't test your code, but more like your deploy will fail and barf on your face if you don't have enough testing coverage. That happens to everyone. So it was time to open up and take some vitamin T. I'm so sorry. Like, I know it was a bad joke, and I knew it when I wrote it. Like, I wrote it. I was like, this is awful. And then, like, the little, like, devil, was like, do it anyway. And I was like, okay. And then that's how we're here now together. Anyway, so I took my medicine, and then something weird happened. I got addicted. And now, the only thing that really makes sense to me as a developer is thoroughly testing my code. It's kind of like when you start eating kale because Michelle Obama is like, kale is super good for you, everyone. And then you're like, okay, because you just really want her to be like kind of happy with you and proud. And maybe have her like elegant but powerful biceps and stuff. But then one day you go into a restaurant and you order a kale salad because it sounds good. And then you're like, oh, Michelle Obama, you beautiful dynamic trickster. And that was me. O'Reilly that's my employer, was Michelle Obama. Don't tell them I said that, except for, sure, it's fine. It's going to be on the internet. Anyway, so that's happening. And then testing was kale, obs. And then I was me, because that makes the most sense here. And then all of a sudden, like, I had a Jonesin for kale. It was Bonkersville, where we are now. So anyway, at one point, I realized that I hadn't really touched like the 5-up code in a while, and it was getting a little dusty, and things were about to sunset, and so I thought I should probably go spruce up the old repo. No big deal. I'll just probably upgrade to Python 3. That seems important, and then I'll like run the test suite, and then I'll find out what breaks, and then oh God, what have I done? Because there was not a single test, like not one, like not even a tiny little testing kale leaf. There was nothing. And this was not going to work for me because I am now the testing spoiled monster you see before you, and I can't, like, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to function without at least decent-ish code coverage. So now that we have Melanie, the testing hero's origin story out of the way, let's do this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is bring in some buddies, because Lord knows I shouldn't be left to anything on my own, really. Who knows why I'm up here now? We should all be a little concerned, actually. Someone gave me a mic and everything. Anyway, so the major things we're going to do are we're going to install PyTest, PyTest Django, Selenium, and PyTest Cov. And then we're just going to pip install all those little critters. PyTest, that first one there, is just a little bit of a sweeter way of working with tests as opposed to the Python's built-in test framework unit test. I'm just going to leave it there, but you can Google it and see all the fun stuff to do with PyTest if you like. PyTest Django makes PyTest play nice with Django. Selenium is going to allow our test to kind of pretend to be a user and poke around in a live web browser, which is pretty neat. And then lastly, my favorite magic there, PyTest Cov, which is going to show us which code we've tested and which we haven't. So let's talk about that last one, PyTest Cov, before we move on. So PyTest Cov is a plugin that implements coverage.py in a way that works nicely with PyTest. Coverage.py is a tool for measuring how much of your code is run when your tests are run. So that's what I mean when I say code coverage, for any of you that have been like, stop just saying words at us, lady. Yeah. So, but you need to be aware with coverage that it's not foolproof, because all it's telling you is if your code is being executed. It's not telling you if your code is being executed in like any sort of logical way at all. So you can think of it as a guide, like a ruler, which measures things, right? But not a guide as in like a wilderness guide, which tells you that you're going to walk into a bear's mouth, which is important to know. I don't know why you didn't notice that the bear's mouth is there, but anyway. So the measurement, though, is pretty cool. So before we start writing any of our tests, right, because we have nothing, we have no testing kale. But before we just like jump in, we're going to get an idea of what we need to do by running through here. So this command here, it's going to run PyTest. It's going to ask for a coverage report to be printed to the terminal. It asks the report to ignore any files that are 100% covered already, which at this point is going to be just mostly empty files. And then it's also going to print out the exact lines that aren't covered. So it's going to give us some really, really useful information. So if we run it, it gives us something like this. You can see that the test coverage is pretty abysmal at this point. And again, whatever coverage is there is probably due to empty files, which are tested for you. Can you believe that you get that for free? So since the code coverage is only at 28%, that means that roughly 72% of our code could be all super weird and buggy, and we wouldn't know until someone in the wild found out about it, which is what everyone enjoys to find out eventually, I guess. Anyway, so testing can help you avoid bugs, but not all of them, but it's a good way to kind of protect yourself a wee bit. So now that we have the tools and we see how much work we have ahead of us, let's write our first test. It's going to be a functional test. So when people talk about testing, a lot of times they'll toss around two different phrases, functional testing and unit testing. We'll get to the unit test later, but the first thing I want to say about functional tests is that they have nothing to do with functions, as in like def, fancy thing. Since functions are so prominent in Python, it would make sense that you would tie the two together, right? That we're doing functional tests, and that means that we're testing our functions. That's not it. Yay! And nothing makes any sense. So that's fun. So what functional tests are about are kind of asking the question, does this code function at all? Does it do at all what I meant for it to do? So since we're talking about Django here, a good example would be if I go to this page, I visit the page, does it do anything, does it behave at all the way I want it to? So it's basically the same as like spinning up your project using like Python, manage.py, run server, that sort of thing, and then just kind of clicking around and making sure that what you think is supposed to happen is actually happening. Without testing, that manual process is the only way to kind of get your bearings and see if anything's working right. Before testing, that was all I had. That was all I did. But it also means that you better hope that you, A, click all the things, B, click all the things in all the ways that they can be clicked, right? And hope that nothing ever goes wrong, which is pretty much how the world works, as we can tell by US elections. Anyway, don't laugh at that. We're doing our best. Anyway, so I'm so sorry, everyone at home. We're going to do that poking around. That wasn't in my notes. This is what happens when you go off script, is that you're like distracted by how weird you are, and but you're the weird thing that's distracting. Anyway, so we're going to do the poking around, right? But we're going to automate it because we're lazy smart, which is a new thing that I made up that you're welcome to put on your resume. So we're going to start with a super basic test. We're going to ask if we can visit this homepage and find some stuff there. If we take a look at the source code, we can see there's a few things there that probably should be there, right? There's a title up there. There's some text, right? And if the page is functioning properly, that stuff should be there. Earlier when we installed Selenium, that was the tool that's going to allow us to automate this poking around situation. Now, I do want to mention that Selenium requires a little bit of setup with a thing called Gecko driver, and that setup can be a little bit wobbly, and I don't have notes on that in this talk, so you'll have to do that on your own. But once you get it set up, because you are brave and smart, you will write tests like this. So when you write tests with Selenium, it does all of that manual stuff for you, like we were talking about. So it's going to visit the page, it's going to poke around for a little bit, and it's going to try to find those elements. Now, in real life, you're probably going to be doing some more complicated tests than just this, but this is like a good example to kind of help us get our feet wet. So when we send Selenium off hunting, we get to just say, because of PyTest, we can say assert when we want to test and see if something's like true or false. So we can assert there that 5up is in the browser title. Then we'll assign all of the body text of the page to a variable text there. And then we can check to see if how it works is in the text. And then we'll see if we can find an element by the link text, say borp. Rats, our test failed. Why? It's because I don't have a link with the text, say borp, on my website. And I'm honestly like a little bit disappointed that none of you was like, say borp, why would that be there? That you're all just like, at this point, say borp is totally on that lady's website. It's fine. If we take out that obviously ridiculous thing, then the tests pass, which PyTest expresses gleefully with a period. Yay! So, to review, we said that the title should have 5up in it, the page should say how it works on it, and if Selenium finds those things, then the test passes, and we know that the page rendered properly, which is wonderful. So when we get that test to pass, you can also see that the test coverage went up quite a bit, which is great. So now we know we're like kind of on the right track as much as we can be, given the situation. So now these little bits here where we're importing stuff and then we're also doing the WebDriver setup, that's going to get obnoxious after a while, right, if we have to do that with every single test. So we can write a quick helper instead. Don't worry about remembering all of this stuff. I'm going to make the slides available. But the important part here is that this bit is going to help us kind of rapidly move through tests, any tests that we write after this. So we're going to pull in these imports here. We've pulled in stuff from ContextLib and from Django and from Selenium. And then we're going to write a class for Selenium testing. So we have a setup here at the beginning that opens a Firefox web browser for all the tests to be executed in. And then we have a teardown method that's going to get rid of that browser when we're done, which is nice. And then the last bit is a context manager, which, true story, is copy-pasted from a fancy fellow named Harry Percival. So I'll have more about him in the resources at the end of the talk. You can look at that up. But the point here is that we're doing a little bit of setup so that we can kind of power through tests after that. OK, now I do want to mention one thing before we move on. There's a practice called test-driven development. Yes, TDD. That is really cool, right? And the idea is that you write your tests first. You write your tests that describe how your code is supposed to behave, and then you write the code to make that stuff happen. If the tests pass, then you know that you've written the code properly, right? That is not what we're doing here. We're coming back in and fixing like this big old pile of mess that I made. And truthfully, I'm still not great at TDD, even when I have the opportunity to do it. Like learning anything in life, learning testing is a great opportunity to practice generosity and kindness toward ourselves. So, you know, put that in your back pocket. Alrighty, so this sweet little test here is going to see if we can log in, which is super important. And the nice thing about it is it's going to hit the HTML page, right? But it's also going to interact with a form. And it's also going to make sure that the user model didn't somehow get like messed up at some point in time. Like it goes through and does quite a few things in just the one test. And that kind of illustrates the power of testing, because if I change my CSS, I should still be able to submit the form, right? If I upgrade to Python 3, like we were talking about earlier, my user model should still be functioning. Like, none of this stuff should break even when I make changes. So if we step through the code, I'm going to make a user here. And then we're going to go to the browser that we set up in that helper class. We're going to find the username element on the page, like in the form. Like, I think this is so magical. You find the username. You can enter in the user email in the user that we just created. Then you find the password element, and you enter in the password from the user we just created. And then you find the submit button, and you click it, because the world is full of magic. Like, I don't know why that's so impressive to me still. Like, you know, whoever wrote Selenium, you can feel proud about yourself. Tell your mom, I'm super impressed. Anyway, you click submit, and then if it's successful, then it'll be able to find on the page, hi, and the username. And it does. Now that we've done all of that work, we have 2 dots. They're twins. Yep. So this is why it's so disturbing to me to not have tests. Without tests, I just have to hope that whatever change I made didn't break anything. And as your project grows and grows, at some point, if you don't have tests, you're relying on yourself to be like some sort of like omniscient, like super developer that knows all and sees all. That is not me. I know you're surprised. And maybe that's you, and that's great, and I don't want to know you, because whatever. But anyway, tests. Exactly, that's what we were talking about. So now, when we run our command with all the goodies for our testing, we can see that we've bumped our coverage up even farther, which is wonderful. And now we'll keep doing this, right? See what else needs to be covered. And the coverage tool is great because it helps you not have to dream up all of the different ways that you need to hit your code. And it also, all the way on the right side of the screen, you can see it's printing out the lines, like the exact lines that don't have coverage. So that'll help you kind of go hunting through your code. Awesome. So we'll continue in this matter until we've got all of our templates and like conditionals that need to be covered, and we're pretty darn confident that we have some functioning code. And then we say hooray. And now we move on. Okay, so unit tests. Like functional tests, the term unit test causes me some confusion. Like the word nonplussed, right? Like this word should mean like super not excited about whatever you're talking about, because like obviously being plussed is like +1 in Slack or something. That's not what it means. It means perplexed, which in and of itself makes me feel nonplussed. Anyway, so the term unit test made me feel like there was some sort of like definition of what like a unit of code was. Like maybe it was an entire Django app, or maybe it was like PY file, I don't know. But that's not what it means. And I am, again, feeling nonplussed, which is apparently my state of being. What it means is like chunk testing, like, I don't know, like smidgen testing, or like niblet testing, like just a bit of testing, like a blob or like a morsel, I don't know, like a bang, like an apportionment. This is the entire talk now, just so you know. It's just this. You're welcome. Anyway, okay, you get the idea. But also, apparently names are meaningless and words are pointless. And I don't know why we even bother to communicate, because everyone argues about what unit tests are and about what functional tests are. There's also end-to-end tests, and there's structural tests, and pregnancy tests, and integration tests, and cake testers. At any rate, the point is, don't try to know stuff. Knowing stuff is impossible. Look at how sad that bearded fellow is. Let's just do stuff. That feels like a good idea. So in 5UP's case, there are a few things that happen magically that the user doesn't really know about or see, like scheduling and sending messages. So we're going to head back to our models and our functions and stuff, and we're going to make sure that the gears are working properly so that our magic car doesn't stall out on our users. So scheduling with 5UP, again, it sends happy messages every day. It works in 2 ways. These are the secrets. At the beginning of the day, the users are separated into 3 random groups. And then for each group, a schedule is made of random times. And this was because I didn't want 5UP users to be on the same schedule, because then, like, if 5UP users were all together at 5 o'clock, and then all their 5 phones vibrated, and they'd be like, oh, boring, our 5 o'clock 5UPs are here, or something. Anyway, I don't want users to get used to getting things at the same time every day, because human brains like novelty, and surprise is part of the fun. So if my code is working properly and I have 10 users, when I run my divide users function, it should give me 3 groups, 2 groups with 3, and then 1 with 4 users. So let's give testing that a whirl. So we're going to make a handful of users here. And then Django's going to throw these in like a test database, and then it'll trash it when we're done, which is good. And then if we call divide user function on with those users as an argument and assign the results to variables A, B, and C, then at the bottom, we'll assert how many should be in each group. And then if we add up all the users, it's equal to all the users in our database. The test pass, and then we know that we're dividing our users properly. All right, what now? Napping, because that was hard. And then we do more of this stuff. We go back and we test all of our templates. We think about what could go wrong, like if a user's not logged in, then they probably shouldn't be able to see account stuff, right? So we make sure that that's not going to happen. We test for that. We think of what should go right, and we try to write tests for that, again, with kindness and generosity toward yourself. Try to dream up all of the ways that your end users can use and abuse your code, and then test for that, and aim for 100% test coverage. And when you get there, you're done forever. Yay, good for you. Unless you ever change your code at all, in which case you have to write more tests. All right, here we go. Review, super fast. Okay, so we've got some good tools to help us. PyTest, PyTest Cov, Selenium, PyTest Django, they're all really great resources. The second thing we've learned is that coverage can reveal spots that you haven't tested and help you get your footing. We've learned that Selenium is a great way to impersonate a user quickly and easily, which is the best way to do anything. And people use words like functional tests and unit tests in a variety of ways. But the thing that's important to note is that we want our websites to run in a way that our users expect, and then we want our code, the rest of like the gears, to run in the way that we as developers expect it to run. Michelle Obama is amazing, and she should totally be my best friend. It's a takeaway. Send her a tweet, she'll like it. And then the final note is that I wish someone had told me the real benefits of testing, which are mental freedom and a safety net to feel like you can grow and experiment. That's really what it does for you. And I'm not gonna lie, like, it's really hard. And we didn't even get to like mocking and fixtures. These things make me want to cry here on the stage. Just kidding, do them, it's fine. But it's all really, really worth it. So if you've been waiting for a magical time to decide to learn testing, I really hope it's now. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. We have these coffee mugs.
Oh, yay!
As a token of appreciation at PyCon.
Thank you.
Thank you for the talk. I don't want you to cry about fixtures and something on stage.
Good.
There's plenty of topics there.